infringing on Canadian citizens' rights by mandating they get a medical procedure done. You are pro-choice, my body, my choice. That's what these truckers are talking about. You're a walking, talking hypocrite. You're an idiot. Good night.
When you elect people to represent you, they represent the majority of the people. Oh, I see Keemstar's back. Okay. You're okay with people continuing to have... Okay, he left. He's okay, he's upset.
I do have Keem back in the call.
Oh, he does? Okay.
I have the stream playing in the background. Oh, by the way, you're not offended that I called you a bitch, did you? Are you?
No, I'm not. It's fine.
Listen, this bitch is long. I know. Okay, so the TLDR, before or even in case you don't want to get into it, I'll just tell you that there's one thing that Stardust and Keemstar have in common right now at this moment, which we can all agree on. And that is that they decided to share the L in this debate. So before we start harassing people and calling them a bunch of shitty names for shits and giggles, please remember not to send anybody hate, harassment or bullying or any type of disparaging comments. That is not cute, that's not fun, and I don't condone it here. So my goal in this video is to do an argument analysis, which means that I want to trace the logic in their respective arguments and point out the fallacies within it, rather than use empirical evidence to say who is factually correct or incorrect. So I won't be looking at any new evidence, I'll just be engaging with the evidence that they themselves used within this debate and brought to the table. That's actually how you determine who won a debate. Now, even though this is a political debate, I want you to remember that neither me nor Keemstar nor Stardust political views actually matter. Like, we are entertainers and influencers and we have no power over the Canadian policies, right? So getting upset with anybody here involved is a choice. Like, you could choose just to enjoy the shit show, and I truly hope that you do. Also, if you have no idea what's currently going on in Canada, I will not be recapping the entire fucking political situation right now. You could literally type into Google truckers honking Canada and you will find every single thing that you need to know. I'll simply say that truckers are being forced to take the vaccination. It is mandated for them to do their job and they're protesting against this. One thing that you should also note from the get-go before we get into it at all is simultaneously there are actually two, I guess, maybe more arguments happening simultaneously. So when one argument is of particular relevance, I'm going to try to emphasize which argument we're talking about before we continue to discuss that specific point. So the two arguments I'll summarize as the vax argument and the protest argument. Everybody constantly jumps between them, they flip-flop. It's not coherent. It's supposed to be fun, right? So we'll just get into the groove of it and see what happens. But the vax argument, in short, is whether or not Canada should be mandating and regulating whether or not the truckers are vaccinated. So in other words, should people have a choice regarding their vaccination status, and should it be enforced when people choose to opt out of this option, right? So that's currently what the protests are about. On the other side of the argument, and what they simultaneously seem to be conflating with the vax argument, is what I'll call the protest argument. And this is whether or not people should have the right to protest when there are very serious and notable economic implications for the entire world, because they're literally closing the borders that are super important for trading cross-culturally. And then even furthermore, in line with the protest argument, is it valid for the government to threaten them by freezing their bank account if they partake in any way, shape or form in the protests as truck drivers or as just supporters or witnesses or even reporters in some cases?
Stardust, do you agree with them, like, stealing the truckers' gas? Do you agree with them, like, literally freezing the truckers' bank accounts?
Freezing bank accounts, while it's like not the best thing, is still better than military force going in there. I would prefer them to not have military force, like,
insane. You are insane.
I don't think they're freezing bank accounts because of an opinion. They are freezing bank accounts because people are blocking trade routes and blocking
in a protest.
and you have the right to express your freedom to live, right? But when your protesting is hindering the freedoms of other people, that's when we have a problem.
Now, the first problem you will notice in this debate is the conception of freedom, and it's not because either party in this debate is counter to freedom. It's simply they are referring to different things. So when Stardust, initially at least, refers to freedom, she's referring to freedom of the general public and the government and the society at large. So in other words, the freedom of people to come and go, cross borders, and for the economy to flourish so that people can live in their freedom. When Keemstar is referring to freedom, he means bodily autonomy, he means pro-choice, he means the option to kill yourself in any single way that you choose. And if you choose not to get vaccinated, that should be within your right. Now, I will say that they do make it clear later on that both of them do want people to actually get vaccinated, but they want them to have the choice over it. That would be a distinction, just so we're clear. Nobody here is arguing on the anti-vax side. So in this context of freedom, Stardust is saying that the freezing of the bank accounts or the asset is better than the alternative. And if you were to ask her what the alternative would be, she would state that military intervention or freezing bank accounts are the two options that the government has in order to get rid of the protesters. So here is an implicit goal that the society would want people to stop protesting because it's hindering them, whether or not it's honking of horns or trade. Something is wrong here and society wants it to stop. So she's taking a perspective from what she would do if she was in the government. How would she maintain freedom of the people and maximize happiness throughout society? i.e., the best possible solution to cause the least amount of harm would be in order to freeze bank assets. So here we can see from the get-go that Stardust is taking the position of a utilitarianist. In other words, she wants to figure out how she can maximize happiness and diminish sadness. Or simply put, how can we fuck over the least amount of people because you just can't please them all?
But when your protesting is hindering the freedoms of other people, that's when we have a problem.
Here we are clearly engaging with the protest argument, and the whole point that Stardust wants to make is that the protest is infringing upon the freedom of rights of the rest of society, and it's just annoying as shit, and we would like it not to be so. So it doesn't matter what they're protesting about. If they're protesting about higher salaries or literally whatever the case might be, Stardust's opinion would remain the same, that there needs to be intervention from the government to stop this so that economic trade and border crossings can continue as intended.
You lost. I'm sorry, you lost.
Okay, whatever makes you feel better, Keemstar. But again, it is not the truckers.
I knew coming in that I was going to win. Like, it's not a surprise, but you lost.
It's not the truckers' job to make decisions for the rest of the populace. It is, however, the president's job or the prime minister's job to make decisions for the rest of the populace. You elect a representative who is there to represent what your best needs are. And when that happens, you're entrusting, this is called consent of the governed, actually, where the governed are actually giving the consent of the people that they elect to make decisions on their behalf. So yes, it is the decisions, it is within the prime minister's power, it is within the politician's power to make decisions that are best for the populace as a whole. When it is truckers, no, we did not elect those truckers as our representatives.
Okay, so this is where we're getting into the blood sports of it all. Keemstar is putting out the bold move of suggesting that Canada is treating its citizens like terrorists, and his reason for this is the idea of freezing bank account and assets is actually a type of clause that they only invoke in most serious situations involving terrorist attacks. So yeah, there is very literally a point. However, as Stardust does point out, the role of the elected officials is to decide what mandates should or should not govern society, and that is not the position of the truckers. However, this problematic argument that Stardust makes is to say that simply because there are rules in society, it is the duty of the citizens to follow them. But the point of a protest is to say that there are powers that may be, whether or not it's an employer or a government or literally whoever, The role of a protest is for the regular folk to say, we do not accept the terms and conditions of this environment. We have no absolute power over you. We cannot tell you what to do. So we are trying to use the only skills, the only resources that we have in order to show you that we are dissatisfied with the state of affairs. So in other words, if they were to just simply cave and agree because their elected officials tell them what is right and what's wrong, then the whole point of a protest would be redundant. In other words, Stardust could have made this point literally as in saying, why can't we all just get along? Yeah, duh. There would be no fight if we just all agreed. Yeah, that's the point. A protest is there for civilization to say we disagree with the powers that may be. The only resources that truckers have is their trucks, i.e. that is going to be the thing used. If you are a school teacher, then you would go on strike and not teach people. That is the point of the protest. So if they were to do something that in no way hindered anybody ever, there was no inconvenience caused, then what incentive would the power that may be have to give a fuck? It would not. So simply saying that they have been elected, therefore we have to follow their rules, is counterintuitive to the spirit of protest. That being said, in democratic societies, we would like to hope and believe that people that are fairly elected and chosen by the people have the capabilities and comprehension to actually make informed decisions that do benefit the entire society. So it's not entirely a futile point, but saying it in opposition to an actual protest makes no sense whatsoever.
Minister who put the country in lockdown. It was the prime minister who shut everything down. The truckers went into the lion's den. They didn't sit home like you, Stardust, in lockdown. No, the truckers went out and worked to make sure you went out and got your little cupcakes and shit. And you want to sit here and talk shit about them, those essential workers? You might as well start talking shit about the nurses that cared for people with COVID.
Well, that's what I would like to ask you, actually, regarding the convoy. There were paramedics that were attacked because of the vitriol that protesters have towards medical workers. Do you consider medical workers as working as like the average worker?
Get into a whole ass list of fallacies, like you could just fucking name drop them, and of course I will. I'll take you through it all. So first of all, Keemstar starts off his argument by saying that actually truckers did risk their life during COVID while everybody was staying home because they were responsible for transporting goods in and out of the country. This, as well as the videos and he shows on later, is an appeal to emotion. In other words, we have to give a fuck about the truckers. Now, of course, please, they are people. Let's, give a fuck about the people. But that carries absolutely no weight with regards to the validity of your argument. You have proven nothing by saying that they are people and we should care. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as a counter argument, Stardust unfortunately decides to double down and not call him on this. So she tries to evoke an even stronger emotion by saying that actually people in the medical fields have had it worse because they have to pretend like they're not working during these protesting times so that they can not be shunned for being medical workers and wearing their scrubs in public. Again, who cares? And by who cares, I mean, yes, of course, we care about the people, all that shenanigans. We're doing an argument analysis here. Argument-wise, it does nothing. Like, who has a sadder story? The truckers who had to drive during COVID, the nurses who had to care about people who weren't vaxxed. Yeah, see, this is what happens when you invoke the vax argument during the protest argument. See how the two conflate with each other, because now we have to care about the fact that there's a virus killing people, and what about the humanity of it all versus the actual problem of people protesting and stunting the economic growth of a country. And then Stardust does something pretty strange. She wants to make the argument that the reason why there should be a government intervention in the protest, the reason why the protest should stop, is because Canadians have somehow indicated on a poll that they are not in favor of the protest continuing. In other words, it's so annoying. Can you guys not chill the fuck out and just not be such cringe lords and just get the mandated vaccination so we can soldier the fuck on? Okay. All right. So here's the dealio with that.
Dude, the truckers should just give the shot. How about the government stops with the mandates?
That's what I'm saying.
Because the vast majority of people
support
it.
Out of your ass again. No. No, false.
I mean,
Wrong.
I linked things, but it's okay.
Keem, if you're just gonna come in here and say that like every study
absolutely
or poll that you present is just fake, but like my
Yeah.
YouTube videos are like real evidence, then there's really no having any conversation with you about what is reality, right?
First of all, Stardust just made the argument that we have government officials elected that should be making the rules and laws that govern society, and we should not resist it, we should cave because we did elect them. So therefore, who gives a fuck what the general population thinks? Like, why is there a poll that determines the right or wrongfulness of these protests? It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter if you truly believe in your previous argument. However, if we now do care about the customer satisfaction of the general Canadian, and we're about to say that, okay, most people are indeed vaccinated. In fact, she does bring up a very cool statistic about 85% of the truckers that have been vaccinated, and therefore it's a pretty popular choice, and it's in season and highly recommended. The second problem with employing this argument is that if we do follow this logic, then it means popular decision, popular choice, popular convenience should determine the rules that mandate everybody else, even in the case that it is your own body and it only affects you.
What are your thoughts on abortion? I am pro-choice.
I'm pro-choice too.
We're both pro-choice, right? Right? My body, my choice, right?
I mean, yeah, in a sense.
Government went and told these people that they have to get a medical procedure done, or they
A
can't
medical
drive
procedure?
truck.
A shot is a medical procedure?
So, for example, not the protest argument, but the vax argument, if we're going to that, then she's basically saying that the vax argument should be a non-argument. People should only deal with the protest argument, and the protest argument leads her to conclude that mandatory vaccinations from a democratically elected official is in the population's favor, because the population said, well, 60% said that they would prefer it if the protests could just, move along. The problem with that argument would be that if the general population tomorrow or in a year's time changes its mind and the polls reflect exactly the opposite, then how are you going to unvax people, right? So every time society changes, new rules govern it, right? So there was a time very recently, less than 10 years ago, where quite a few parts of America made it illegal for gay marriage to be a thing. And if you were to poll people, you would have concluded that gay marriage is in fact bad, sinful. It should be illegal. It should not be allowed, and it is in fact a problem. So this argument falls flats completely on its face. But does that stop them from going into a 40 fucking minute debate on the validity of polls and whether or not it has anything to do with anything? No, of course not.
You're not offended that I called you a bitch, did you? Are you?
No, I'm not.
That's
I'm not. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was just heat of the moment thing.
Yeah.
But I'm playing the stream in the background, right? And I'm playing Rocket League, and I hear you say, yeah, it's kind of tough now when we just don't know what to believe. We don't know what to trust. No shit. You want to know why? Because the mainstream media is about as credible as the boomers on Facebook. Like, you don't know what the truth is. There's so many different opinions and so many different facts, competing facts on almost every single story. So I find it crazy that you're bringing up polls. Like,
basically, the super annoying argument that continues unreasonably long is about the validity of polls. So, Stardust is using polls in order to demonstrate that there is a consensus amongst Canadians that the protests are in fact annoying, and they themselves would prefer it if the truckers just got vaccinated. And then Keemstar is countering it by saying polls are unreliable to convey the truth, simply because the 2016 polls suggested that Hillary Clinton would win the election, and this did not happen. And they continue to debate this point for no clear reason. Look, here's the short and long of that scenario. Polls do actually carry some validity if you want to gather some information about the general opinion of the general population in a small condensed form. It does indicate leanings towards a certain position. However, if I was Keemstar, the counter argument that I would make would not be the example of the 2016 election. It does clearly fail, and that could be argued even to be an outlier situation where just one example doesn't count. What I instead would say is that if these people, the Canadians, are threatened with their fucking bank accounts being frozen or their assets being frozen simply by associating with this protest, then you could make the case that people are under duress when giving these answers. Whether or not it was conducted by a third party, you have no idea the implication when you tell a rando asking you your opinion about the protest, what the implications for yourself could be, right? And we can say that it's more than zero. We can say that people could feel intimidated. The idea of delivering an answer to a consensus form under duress could indicate to us reasonably that people might lie, that people might feel intimidated by outside forces and give an answer that is maybe not the truth. Therefore, this specific polling question, the poll whether or not Canadians in general support these protests happening and whether or not they support the truckers' right to be fucking cringe and deny their vaccines, could be delivered under duress, i.e. making the poll questionable at fucking best. So that's what I would have said on that. I would not have used a poll and the satisfaction of Canadians in order to prove this point. I would have simply said that you can be right or wrong regardless of whether or not the majority agrees with you, and it's clear from this that Stardust does fall into the utilitarianist belief that the most happiness towards the most people would be the most ideal outcome. Hence, most Canadians would want the protest to end. They would want people to be vaccinated and they would want the borders to be open, and therefore, since it's the majority opinion and it would bring a majority of happiness, therefore the truckers should just shut the fuck up and follow the mandate or get a new job. That's the only point of this segment. Nothing more, nothing less.
Someone's gonna win this ticket and then it switches around and someone else wins. To say that the polls are always right is the fucking...
Who said always right? I never said always.
Oh my god, it's just frustrating. It's so frustrating. Like, I'm talking to a toddler.
I feel like I'm talking to a toddler because I tried to explain this article you linked to me, but you don't seem to like it.
What does it even have to do with the truckers, though?
It doesn't. You're the one who used it as you used it.
So in the stunning turn of events, there is another appeal to emotion when Keemstar does link to the whole group and to us, the audience, a Twitter video in which the police of Canada blatantly state that anybody attending the protest, whether you're actively involved, just offering support, or even a fucking journalist, you will be followed up and financially sanctioned for months to come.
Support this shit. It is wrong.
Yeah, if it's like months, I don't know. I again would have to look a little bit more into this.
Simply
but if it's
going to the protest,
yeah, for going
to like get you to be fucked with
I mean,
by
that's
the
what the
federal
police
government.
are. That's coming right out of the police,
Wait,
the Canadian police's mouth. I mean, I feel like that's the best source, right?
Wait,
well, we need to see more context, I think. But like,
Lex, do you guys have like federal law enforcement?
Stardust, listen to me. I
would assume
swear to
so.
God,
I don't
on
know.
everything. You are so wrong on this. You cannot support this shit.
okay, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I see, and I feel uncomfortable with certain parts of it as well. But I guess I just feel uncomfortable. Yeah.
I don't know how this is better.
So wait, hold on.
Stardust,
wait,
real quick.
Wait. I don't. Here's the thing.
This is
I
nothing
don't.
like America. This
I don't.
Is nothing
Right.
Like America.
Sure.
This is not like our country at all.
I
This
don't
is
make
insanity.
blanket statements until I know, I don't make blanket statements on specific, policies until I know all of the details of that policy. It's the same exact thing that I've done with anything else that I've cited here.
So just on a human level, if you're Canadian, please be safe. If this in any way affects you, please make good choices for yourself. That aside, back to the argument. So we are clearly back in the protest argument. Now here is a point that some might say there is some conceding, but it's not that obvious because there are massive egos at play. And what happened here is actually that Stardust does say to some extent that there are certain things that the government can get away with and things that the government cannot get away with. So she's arguing in favor of the global society and saying that it would be in the best interest of absolutely everybody if the protests ended, and it would therefore be in the interest of the people if the government of Canada enacted and imposed certain rules, laws, and governs in order to stop these protests and open the borders again. So that would imply heavily that we would have to force these people to get vaccinated. However, she's not a fucking idiot. She's not saying that by any means necessary. She's not that wild. She does have certain limitations and boundaries. And the video that we just saw is one of those boundaries where, of course, hounding people that are just even loosely attached or even loosely associated, even reporting on the situation, should not be sanctioned to the extent that people actually committing crimes of any nature should be, right? So these are distinctions. She's not fucking heartless, cruel, evil. I don't like that narrative. She is reasonable, but she cannot say that much. She can only hint at that and say where it's like, yeah, I would kind of have to disagree, or it's sort of wrong, or maybe if, or one of my most fucking favorite lines is the whole,
yeah, but
so wait, are you pro the government seizing of assets?
So I mean, people have illustrated the point that it's like kind of uncomfortable, but like,
well, I think like,
yeah,
because she doesn't want to make generalized statements which could indicate that she's wrong, because her ego is still big, right? Don't get me wrong, she's not the worst human being in the world, but she does have an ego. But same with Keemstar. That's why this was so much fun. However, clearly an appeal to emotion from Keemstar's side in order to say, like, this is how bad it is morally. We should give a fuck. There are moral implications here, and on top of that, political implications that could tell the rest of the world how it is okay to mistreat and abuse the freedoms of your own citizens. That is the point that he's trying to get across. And Stardust is saying, like, yeah, buddy, but we gotta be reasonable. Like, we as a society gotta, keep it pushing. And since you can't make everybody happy, there's gotta be some healthy compromise. And since it's only 15% being little fuckers, we could just, we could forcibly get them to vaccinate themselves and boot the fucking rest, And if they don't like it, they can just get another job. Yeah, that's essentially what they conclude. So clearly neither party here is willing to compromise, and we'd love to see it. I'm totally okay with this.
Well,
yeah, the polling is done.
My ways. You can snicker all you want, but like, do you believe that simply attending this protest is grounds to have your fucking shit fucked with by the government?
We don't have the information on this.
No, I don't. But I'm not. Why don't you cut out the fucking smug little self-satisfied chuckling and actually address this fucking point?
The claim was that somehow dictate, or just because how
with, like, arguing over polling,
oh my god, he's just gonna
everything
talk
else,
over me.
It's just so basic, like human rights and like common sense. Like, dude, these people are being fucked so bad by the government. I'm
thinking of like anybody who's committing a crime, though, right?
So you're just pro-government. You're pro-government.
In a way, yeah. I think so. Yeah.
So you're more pro-government than the individual.
I think that I'm pro-government in the sense that
more than individual freedom.
The individual freedoms shouldn't encroach on other individual freedoms. So.
They are.
Right. When somebody is blocking a border crossing, yes, they are infringing on other people's freedoms.
You have the right. Yeah, but you have the right to get a shot or not. Like, you have the right. Like, what do you mean?
Sure.
Like, what do you...
You have the right to get a shot or not. Mm-hmm.
I just quickly want to point out here that Stardust does say basically that if you don't like it, you can take a hike, right? So since you are a citizen of Canada, you have to opt into their rules. And if you are a truck driver in Canada, you can always just get a different job. The problem with this argument is that it actually negates the definition of a protest, which is in order to change the status quo. It is in order to tell the powers that may be that how things are unsatisfactory and needs to be changed. There's literally no better option to show your dissatisfaction than through a protest. Some might argue that if you want to be a solution and not a problem, then protesting is actually the best option to take. I just also want to point out, I have no idea how jobs are looking in Canada, but in South Africa, where I'm currently at, you can have multiple degrees and still struggle to find a job. Like, holy fuck, it's not a choice. If you have a job, if you've managed to keep a job during this pandemic, then you hold on to that bitch. Like, you don't just have the option of getting a different job. It's not that chilled.
Okay. We have, again, a concept called consent of the governed, right? And you elect certain representatives, to carry out certain policies and to make decisions on behalf of the people. I would think that the average Canadian did not elect the truckers to block ports of entry. That is not a duty that has been assigned to the truckers. It is a duty that has been assigned to politicians to make decisions on behalf of the better of the greater good of the country.
I would like to respond as a Canadian
people. Do you think the Canadian people sign up for politicians to use the same laws that they use to go after terrorist organizations?
That's what I'm saying, exactly, Flamenco. Yeah. That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Right, but again, we're talking about
in 2021 thought there was gonna be a fucking emergency act to fucking freeze bank accounts of anyone standing in the street next to a protest that's peaceful. What?
Again, it's not peaceful. It's not peaceful. It's blocking ports of entry.
Stardust, there was a protest based on government overreach. The mandate was considered government overreach. So there was a protest, and the reaction to the protest is more government overreach. You are insane to support this. An insane person would support it.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a battle of egos, the likes of which the world has never seen before. In the left corner, we have Stardust arguing that fucking closing borders with trucks is terrorism. Actual fucking civil terrorism. Therefore, the government is in its right to impose terrorist laws, rules, regulations, and restrictions such as freezing assets. On the opposite side, we have Flamenco coming in saying, civil disobedience ain't no terrorism, sis. Take a fucking seat. But then Stardust hits him with a fucking lift jab saying that freezing assets is not a sign of economic terrorism, it's rather punishment to make them stop. In other words, that if Stardust is right, she's basically saying that the government should have the power, or does have the power, to simply say, I see your protest and I raise you a no. Like, just no. And unfortunately, that contradicts the earlier point that she made about it being democratic. Like, you cannot have democratic and elected as part of the discussion and also have mandates as a part of the same discussion and then have both coherently be the same fucking thing, right? You cannot have a dictatorship and a democracy at the same time and say just respect the powers that be. That is exactly why the protests exist. It's an either or if we follow your own logic, right? So, in other words, the question of whether or not it is terrorism unfortunately was not resolved because nobody in this debate bothered to fucking Google the definition and tell us if it is economic terrorism and whether or not the government in reverse is actually doing terrorism by threatening people and withholding their fucking finances. And so we inconclusively have the worst line of this entire debate delivered by Stardust, and that is...
Are you saying that Black Lives Matter are terrorists?
It depends on what you're talking about.
No.
It does, yeah.
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Here's a compilation of both sides taking extraordinary L's from being extraordinarily cringe.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Shut up. Just close your Twitch channel altogether, you fucking moron.
In the blocking of streets are committing a criminal offense. And you may be arrested.
In addition.
Do you think polio's good? Do you like polio? Do you like polio? You sound stupid.
Something happened in the
past. Oh my god. Well, hey, let me finish. No, I want to finish.
Okay.
I want to finish.
I'll let the
Oh my god, okay. I'm gonna talk now. Please don't interrupt, all right? Chat, This woman just said the protesters were crippling the nation, right? No, the Prime Minister had Canadians in lockdown multiple times and shut the entire government down. This woman is talking on a hill of fucking lies, a hill of bullshit.
Why are you losing your shit, homie? That you're getting so emotional.
Why are you cutting me? Why are you cutting me off? Why are you not letting me speak?
Wait a minute. Keemstar is the one with the soy energy here, muting somebody because he can't handle somebody's opinion. Oh no! I gotta mute mind waves. I can't handle it. Soy!
If you're strongly convinced that either Keem or Star won the debate, then it's probably your bias showing. The reason is because clearly Keem responded out of his fucking ass. He wasn't going to change his mind from any new or counter evidence, and him rage quitting was just further solidification of this opinion. Stardust, on the other hand, shifted the goalpost continuously throughout this debate so that she could reference data that backed up smaller points that she was making and to avoid the overall points that were clearly contradictions of her own opinions that she mentioned prior. Like, she constantly changed the argument from the anti-vax stance to the anti-protest stance so that she could morally be coherent with other opinions that she has, such as being pro-choice and then pro-government. This is ultimately an intellectual dick measuring contest, and neither party caved. Therefore, we, the entertained, throwing the tomatoes, are the true winners. We were #blessed. But listen, if you don't know how to respond to the protest, the honking, and the freezing of your assets, then I hope you look for advice from people more qualified and relevant than the entertainers in this entire video. Because we are all just dumb thoughts with opinions and we do not know shit about fuck. Viele.
Truckers not wanting to get the vaccine, fucking cringe, just do it. Trudeau freezing bank accounts, like, are you like retarded? Like...